Welcome to the Hamilton Wenham School Committee meeting. This is being recorded by HWCAM. Is Pledge of Allegiance on here? Yeah, so for all those who are able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So the chair is currently not here. We're expecting him shortly. So if it's okay with everybody, I'll act as the chair until he gets here.
Yeah, vice chair.
Okay, so there are no citizens currently here for comments, so if they come later for the hearing, we'll hear them then. First thing tonight's only agenda item is to talk about the superintendent search, and the first thing we're going to do is to hear the results from the focus group and surveys from Dorothy Presser.
Okay, thank you. So I assume that you've all seen the write-up, so I'm not going to read it or go into it in extensive detail, but give you the highlights. We ran a number of focus groups and a number of, and we ran the online survey. We had a total of 52 people who attended the various focus groups. Most of those were staff, not atypical in running focus groups, that most of the attendance would come from staff and community attendance would be a little bit lower. It's a lot easier for staff already in the building. When at the time of the focus group, they don't have to make a trip out. The online survey is available, so that the feedback on the online survey was much more heavily geared towards parents and community members responding to the survey. So in the end, it was about roughly 50-50 in the feedback that you got. So in the areas of strength, first of all, we asked, what do you see as the areas of strength in the district? The first thing that came up pretty universally with everybody was the teaching staff. That people find that the teachers are caring and compassionate, care about their kids' education, and do a good job of giving it to them. They tend to stay in Hamilton Wenham. A teaching force that doesn't have a lot of turnover is definitely an asset to the community. And the teachers and educators themselves felt like the environment that they work in is collaborative, and they feel like they work as a team. And they were complimentary of that environment that's created. The next thing that came up, which is somewhat unique to Hamilton Wenham, is that people are very appreciative of the forward-looking view of education that the district is working on. I'd sort of heard about it in, being in some of the policy meetings, and I was actually a little bit surprised at how pervasive it was throughout the district to hear about that. People are pleased that the community or the district is working to engage students to ensure their future success in a rapidly changing world. So you're looking at how is the world changing and how can we change our education to make sure our kids are prepared for that world. And also appreciative that there's work to chart the district's own path rather than just sort of copycat what's going on in other districts that might seem to be successful. The staff in particular likes that there's a look ahead to the next and the development of a long-term strategy. And that the district is looking at not only just that look ahead, but also continually looking at where can we improve as a district, where can we get better. Strong academic achievement of the district was certainly something that people felt strongly that was a benefit to the district. It attracts families to the district. And that reputation kind of then becomes somewhat self-perpetuating. There were people, you'll see in some of the challenges, there were people concerned whether that strong reputation was being upheld or whether there might be some slippage that needs to be addressed. Sense of community came up in a couple of different ways. Staff in particular talked about, and parents as well, that the schools are part of the community, that the school has ties and engagement to the community. It gets the kids out in the community, and there's relationships between the school district and the community. And then again, the educators spoke about there being within, amongst the educators, that sense of community. Support for the schools was another item that came up. Stakeholders expressed that it's a small district, doesn't have a commercial tax base, so it doesn't have, it's an affluent enough community that the state is not pouring money in. But the community is supportive enough that opportunities are available for students, that class sizes are staying small, that given the size of the community, there are a fair amount of opportunities for the kids to experience different courses, different extracurricular activities. Then there's some of the areas of challenge that people saw. And universally, the first thing that came up was the state of the facilities. That they feel that this is an area that has been sort of an ongoing issue. Particularly athletic fields were mentioned every time facilities came up, as well as some of the buildings. So, people are saying this is an issue that needs to be addressed. It's been a longstanding issue that has not been addressed. At the same time, and sort of tied into that, budget came up. People understand that there's pressures on the budget, are concerned that because of that lack of tax base, because of that not a lot of outside funding, that there could be issues that come up that cause cuts that people don't want to see, and that if the facilities do get addressed, that is a pressure on the budget that hasn't been there. Special education programming came up as well. People have concerns about the ability to keep kids in district as a preferable way to educate the kids. Understanding sort of the balance of the small size of the district and the ability of the district to develop those in-house programs, but the desirability to do that rather than have the out-of-district tuitions or even send the kids away from their home district. There were some issues mentioned about curriculum and work that needs to be done. Not that it's not being done, but that the continued work needs to be done to make sure that the curriculum is developed in a way that can address the needs of diverse learners. There was also some mention of the need for vertical articulation that would make the curriculum like a smooth path through the grades. And then there was some concern on the part of the staff that perhaps the number of initiatives is high, and they're unable to get their feet on the ground with some of them before others come along. Social emotional learning was mentioned as a concern, not as something that's not being addressed, but something that the district needs to continue to be aware of and continue to address. That makes sense. And again, I mentioned that, the ranking of the district, that is, the high achievement is lauded by some, and whether or not that achievement is remaining as high is a concern of others. Like many districts that have the, small suburban towns, Hamilton-Wenham is not very diverse, and people have concerns that there should be a way to expose children or expose students to diversity within the community and within their education. And then also, there's challenges that you don't know about. How do you plan for that? How do you make sure that you are continuing to get students ready for the world they're going to face with the challenges that exist in terms of future planning? So that kind of takes care of the challenges and the successes that people see in the district. And we ask about, given that, what leadership are you looking for in the next superintendent? People are always looking for strong communication skills. Communication goes two ways, obviously. It's both output and input, or speaking and listening. So people are very intent. They want to be informed. They want a superintendent who's out there and visible, out there and visible, that keeps the community informed and is able to advocate for the schools, get people excited about doing their job, about working here, about being here, and advocate to the community on the things that the schools need, and really be a champion for the district. Visibility is always important. People are looking for visibility within the community, out there, seeing parents in the community at important school and community events, and visible within the school. Visible so that they're in the building. They're seeing what's going on the ground. That helps inform the decisions that they make when they're making decisions. That gets to know staff, that gets to know students. Staff feels that they have things to offer in terms of developing goals, in terms of developing ideas and so forth. So they're looking for a leader who is inclusive and collaborative and will listen to their ideas and include them in that planning. Given the concerns about the budget, a superintendent who has some financial savvy and strong financial skills is important. And someone who understands sort of the hopefully a little bit changing groundwork of the Student Success Act and how that will affect Hamilton-Wenham. Given that you're a regional district and given that there's a necessity to work with town officials in 2 different towns, people are certainly looking for someone who can build that relationship with the town, with the municipal officials on the town side. In terms of bringing the district forward, in terms of helping the staff develop and continue on the path that they are, it's important that the new leader understand and recognize what good teaching is. Very often that comes from someone who has classroom experience and can really understand the day-to-day job of the teachers, the challenges the teachers face, and so forth. That is about it. I'm not going to talk, I think we want to wait to talk about the selection criteria. Maybe that's next, because there's not a lot of community here to give feedback on the profile.
Nothing to be heard. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the selection criteria that
Unless,
here?
Does anyone have any questions on the, yes?
You mentioned slippage a couple of times. Slippage in the direction the district was taking, slippage in the ranking of the district, the forward vision, and you mentioned that they wish their opinions to be heard, respected, and included in decision-making. Do they feel like the previous administration was not doing that? Is that?
And they were not asked about. In that sense, they were asked about what do you envision, right? So that's not really. I think the ranking is something you can say, well, that's something that it happened in the past, right? So that happened. They're looking at U.S. News and World Report, they're looking at Boston Magazine and other things and saying, is our ranking slipping, and is that something to be addressed? So far as wanting that voice, I think that's more when you say, what do you want in a superintendent? Okay. They say, I want to have a voice. I want someone who will give me a voice. It's not a comment at all about earlier or later.
Going on.
Yeah.
That's what they want going forward.
Yes, yes. Any other questions?
Sorry, Michelle, is this being taped live or is it recorded? Do you know? Because somebody just messaged saying that they can't get it live.
Is it a
I don't know.
YouTube feed thing again?
The YouTube isn't working right now. We're still trying to figure out if that really changed this past week. They can get it on TV still.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Only if you're paying your cable bill and contributing your taxes to HWCAM can you watch it live.
Yep, okay.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
I don't know if this is I guess it's just I'm curious, as far as priorities go for a superintendent, reaching out relationships with town stakeholders, students, staff, is it fair or appropriate or to rank that, or can we put that as or in this, are people putting one over the other? Does that?
I would say, thinking about the feedback that was quite prevalent. And if I wanted to rank, what did people want to see, that was generally the first thing mentioned. So I would say it's probably of primary importance to the stakeholders.
And in those three categories, could you decipher, pull one that was greater than the other? Or could you just mix them all together? Could you just bundle them together?
I think in terms of thinking of who are you looking for, I think I would mix them all together. I mean, I think
Okay.
strong communication skills
Yeah,
should incorporate all those.
right.
Both the communication's two ways, right? So if you're good at one and not the other,
Right.
if you're a good talker and not a good listener, you're not really a good communicator, right?
Right.
Right.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up here in the reading. So out of 52 people attending the focus groups, and we did, what, 5 different focus groups?
No, 7?
Yeah, it was more
Well-
than 5.
All right,
It
so
was
about 8 per.
2,
Well, there was 3 grade levels.
there were 7.
There was 3 grade levels for the parents and then the community. So
And
7.
the central office.
Oh, and the central office, so
Yeah.
8.
Yeah,
The central office, so that means we were inviting in administrative staff as well.
yes,
All right.
yes.
Then 126 respondents to the online survey.
Yep.
Was that open to,
That was open to anyone that was open to staff, community members, parents, students, anyone.
One student who responded.
Yeah, one student responded.
One student?
so, and we have the demographic breakdown
Yep.
of the survey?
Yep.
So how many people, was this sort of multiple choice or ranking to distinguish between areas of strength and, areas of challenge?
So it was a mix. There were a few questions that were ranking questions, and there were a number of questions that were open-ended. So in reading through all the different comments, that's how I got to the summary, along with the comments, obviously, at the focus groups.
Yeah, that was the one we approved here when Dorothy was here.
Did, and then just sort of, how many people needed to respond with something for it to make this list here?
I didn't have a number. I was just looking for the themes that were coming through.
All right, so someone could have said, one person could have said something and it made,
No. I was looking for the themes.
Themes.
So if it was an isolated comment, it did not
okay.
necessarily make it in.
Are these results typical for something so critically important as a superintendent
You mean
position?
the numbers?
Well,
Are
so to me, it's a very low number, but you would know better than I would.
Different communities are different. It's not so low that I would say, wow. That's
Okay.
certainly the focus group participation was, I think, comparable to what one might see.
Okay. Thank you.
And that Glenn did a few of the focus groups, I did a few of the they were good conversations. The
I
people that came were.
participated in one as a parent, yeah.
Yep.
I'm just looking at, the one thing that sort of stuck on my mind was like under curriculum and reliance on out-of-the-box curricula. It seems like a very specific term to use. That's why I was wondering if it was a one-off or if multiple people use that term, it would actually definitely sort of.
It was if I remember right, it was particular to a school, but it was not just one person. It came up in the discussion. And what they were talking about was more if you buy sort of a,
Investigations math.
yeah, and like investigations math. And it may need to be, instead of developing your own curriculum in-house, you buy someone else's curriculum, you may need to make some additions and adjustments to make it work in your district. That may take a few years. I don't know how often, how long it's been here, in order to make it fit what you need to address all your learners. I think that's really,
This has been an ongoing issue, I think, with the curriculum, and
say that again?
an issue, we've had a lot of things trying to get the curriculum going.
Well, our new director of curriculum has only been here for 3 years, so.
Well, and, even if it had been someone who was here a while, it probably would take a few years for it to get to where you wanted it to be.
Right.
Yep.
So, I mean, and that's what there's some stuff here that just sort of, not that I'm questioning the methodology, but just makes me wonder how everything is coming about because, and what could be, how could a new superintendent increase diversity in her town?
I'm not, that,
It didn't say that.
it didn't
No,
say
no, I
that,
don't-
yeah.
but
It said to increase
Yep.
the opportunity to experience
Right.
diversity, which doesn't have to be diversity in the town. It can be going out to,
Be going out?
having the children have experiences that are outside of town to experience that, or having experiences come to them in town. It doesn't necessarily mean changing the demographic.
Yeah, it doesn't, I don't think people were looking to change the demographics of the town by saying that. They were saying expose students to diversity.
I can receive, but I can't send.
So what we have to do is approve this suggested, that these are the skills that we think the next superintendent would need.
Well, actually, I put them out there as suggested, and gave you a bunch of bullets, did a little more thinking about it, too. Because ideally, you want to keep it to about 5 or 6. You don't want to describe, a person who doesn't exist because you've asked for so many attributes that not everyone would have those strengths. So you could do things like, if you took communication skills at the first one and combine it with a leadership style that's visible and inclusive and make a bullet that kind of includes both of those things, you could reduce the bullet. And you could combine knowledge and experience, school budget and fiscal development with capital planning. I think when I look at the important bullets, because I didn't really prioritize them when I did them, I think that demonstrated success in improving and maintaining high academic performance and understanding and recognizing good teaching are 2 things that, based on what people said they're looking for in a leader and what they value in the district, are 2 things that you would want to make sure you have in there.
So Dorothy, I'm a little, so I appreciate the work. I'm not exactly sure, so can you give us guidance on like how we really should use the feedback from the focus groups and the surveys? So the suggested selection criteria, so there are 9 bulleted items here. Are we bound to these, or are
No,
we?
not at all. No, not at all.
Okay,
But
so-
I tried to put bullets that I felt reflected what came
Yeah,
from
and I
the
see
focus
that,
groups.
so I
Yep.
appreciate that to help, condense it down. It's really good, really helpful. As I read this list, I would think that it would be, these are all qualities that these are qualities that we would all want in any candidate. So is the idea that these would be, how would we use these?
So
Is
that
these- yeah.
these selection criteria are what you put out when you do the advertising, right? And then when the screening committee is looking at the resumes and doing the interviews, they should be keeping those criteria top of mind. So if you have something about communication and visibility and leadership skills, they're looking through, what has this person done? How are they, when we ask them about that, do they have a good answer? Is it a strong answer? Is it a weak answer? Are they someone who you get the impression doesn't have those skills? Or do you get the impression, wow, this is really a strong skill of theirs?
Okay. All right, that's helpful. Thank you.
So you are suggesting that we combine these to get 5?
I think 6 would be okay. But sometimes committees want like 14 or 15. It gets so dilute then that you can't.
Like some of the,
some of these just seem like givens. You know,
But givens to us, but maybe not givens to the committee that we're passing it off to.
So-
I think that I have enough faith that everyone that has sort of volunteered to go through this process would go in understanding that the candidates they would see and the candidates that they would be trying to pick from and weed through would have a knowledge and experience in school budgeting and fiscal development.
I push back on that a little bit.
Excuse me?
Because I would push back on that a little bit, because you might be very entranced, but maybe that's not the right word, with a candidate who has good communication skills and has been a leader of a small building, but has never really been involved in the budget process.
So if this were a year ago and I was on the selection committee, I would need this. Because as a parent, I have no, idea what we're
I think
looking
because
for.
you've been on the school committee a while and you're in education, David, that for you, this is a given, but we've got to think of a broader range of people that they don't all see this.
Right, but we're not talking about the community at large. We're
So-
talking about people who specifically applied to be in consideration to hire or to, be part of the process of hiring the new superintendent.
Can
Right,
I
so you
back-
have to, you would think that that alone would come with some sort of knowledge and skill set of what's to be expected.
There's a flip side to that, though, because this is also how, this is also how you're advertising. So if you don't tell the candidates that you place a priority on fiscal skills, that may be reflected in the pool of people that you get.
All right, I'll accept that. I like that.
And if I have a fourth grader, I'm sorry, didn't mean to hit you.
She does it again.
If I have a fourth grader, I want to know that my child is sound and getting and being well educated.
Right.
I don't have time or wherewithal to know what the superintendent should be doing, except in my own little world what my child is.
No, I mean, so.
Right.
And we don't have a packed house of experts that are coming and viewing what the school committee does all the time. So I think it's a lot to assume that they know.
So here's kind of what I'm thinking, right? And I'm a bit on the defensive about this, and I think everyone at this table should be as well, because I think, I don't know how many times that I've had to answer, just talking to people randomly around town about this, the budget, and, they're like, well, can't you guys get creative? And like acting like that's not something we're constantly trying to do anyway. Like, oh my God, I never thought about that, And sometimes I take it as sort of a slight that, that they don't think that we go through the budget with the, tenacity that we do. So it's kind of a hot button issue for me in that regard. I definitely speak to a lot of people around town, about this stuff, but that's one thing all the time is, got to get creative, think outside the box.
So,
Well, which
so
goes to the
to
point
that,
people think it's important.
so to that point, if the community's looking at this and they say, well, the school committee's not even looking for someone who has budget expertise?
So is a way to think about this, like these are the baseline expectations, and then in meeting with people, you consider and start to learn about people's unique qualifications? Right? I don't know.
Yes,
And expertise.
and
right.
expertise, yes.
Also, you're going to be screening before you interview. So you go through and you're like, well, that person doesn't have any budget experience. That's one of the criteria.
Right.
Maybe they're not someone to interview.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's a kind of a good way to put it. I mean, you want people to have some basic set of skills that you feel are important here, and then once you've determined a group of people who have those skills, then you're looking at where's really the match. Who's really got a good fit with us, and that's sort of the second step that you're talking about, what makes them unique or different or a good fit for Hamilton Wenham.
So,
So, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I mean, that then brings me to, or, does anyone think we're missing the mark on baseline expectations? Or things we should, other qualifications, even at that first rung, that we should be considering?
So if you look at the, this might answer your question. If you look at the brochure, these are the selection criteria. A couple other baseline, if you look where it says qualifications, there's a couple other baseline qualifications to look at. That they have to be licensed or eligible for a license as superintendent, that they have at least a master's degree or advanced degree preferred, and that they have at least 10 years in education, including teaching, central office, and administrative experience. So that's another piece of the baseline expectation. Does that get a little bit to what you were thinking?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's anything missing from this list. I don't think we're blatantly missing, like, can juggle 3 tennis balls while walking down the hall. Like, I mean, I don't think we're missing anything.
I would just like to see that, I greatly appreciate the capacity for innovative thinking and openness to new approaches to teaching and learning. I'd like someone to demonstrate that they've done that with available resources, with available facilities, without asking for more money to do it. I don't know if that's because I'd like to blow up this 100-year-old model of education, but not add anything else to the budget.
It's a small ask.
Yeah. Well, I think it's
Well, and
possible.
actually, I mean, that was another one I had starred based on the emphasis of that future focus that I think might be important to express in some way.
I feel like you can put this experience with capital planning up, just put it in with the bullet, with the budget. Knowledge and experience of budgeting and capital planning, because that is where that kind of comes up.
Yep.
And then I'm not sure about this demonstrated, if we have to have someone who has a demonstrated knowledge of special education programming and its administrative elements, because we have a special ed director who is the expert in that. They just need to be able to guide that person and advise that person.
That was one I didn't have starred.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean,
Such a big part of our world.
right?
A big part of our
I agree. So I'm just saying, to me personally, if we had to eliminate it, that's the one I would eliminate. But that doesn't mean that that's not important, and if it's important enough, then we should keep it.
I think it's important enough because that's a big part of the school district.
All right, so we need to keep that one.
So, I don't know, because I'm with you, Rochelle, in that, I think that, sort of like that school budget sort of peeve that I have in saying that, to signal that out is saying that our current sources, now sure, we want to continuously look into our student services department and how we can, provide better services for all of our students within, but, pointing that out like this is again, another one of those sort of punch in the guts, like thinking that like we're not to sort of point that out or have it sort of said that that's something we should be looking at is assuming that that's not something that's already happening,
I think maybe you're looking at things differently than I am. That
Always do.
so.
That's
So
sort of
when
my
you're
thing.
saying yes, these are things that we always do. They're things you want to make sure you continue to do.
Right.
Right. So you explicitly say these are things that are important for us, not things that we take as a given.
So,
Does that?
so knowledgeable of public policy, state operation mandates, and regulations. So that, to me, would come up if it was like, only if people from Rhode Island and Maine and stuff were necessarily applying. But otherwise, I think we could assume that they would have that if they had a license, because in order to get a license, you have to know those things, so is
That
that one
I
you think we
agree-
could pull off?
That's the one thing I thought could be pulled off. Going back to the special education, why I like that was because sometimes it's always good, you may have someone who's, we have our director who's in charge of that, but sometimes it's good to be able to go back and forth and have ideas of other school districts maybe and say, okay, well, this is what we did, here's another way we can look at it too, to bounce ideas too. So I did like that. But I agree, the knowledgeable of public policy, state operational mandates and regulations could be taken off. Unless we're getting a lot of people from out of state who aren't familiar.
Even so, I mean, right now, our current interim came to us from Maine, but went to Maine from Massachusetts. So it's,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
it's part of being, you need a Massachusetts superintendent licensure too, so that comes sort of with that territory. So you're already covering your base there.
All right, so we're definite on the budget, we're definite on demonstrated knowledge of special education. How do we feel about capacity for innovative thinking and openness?
I can't imagine a superintendent in this day and age not.
Oh, I can't.
Oh, I can.
I definitely can. Now, whether or not we do that in here,
It's worked,
that's
it's
two
worked.
different
Oh,
things.
Michelle, I should have brought, I should have introduced you about, what was it, 6 years ago, 7 years ago? And then you would say, okay, I see what you're talking about.
I'm being hopeful, saying it's the 21st century that, but.
Well, and I think this particular one sends a message that this district is somewhere on a path.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And that's what I was going to say too, is that it seems getting through here, putting my bruised ego aside, that it seems like we're getting feedback that this district and this community is looking for positive educational change, for innovative thinking, for innovative, and that's good, that's great. In fact, I know I've spoken with a lot of you guys offline and really thinking the opposite, thinking that this is more of a traditional, this community was looking for a traditional model
I was
in new
surprised to see this
buildings,
too.
Yeah.
but
Dave, I'm not sure you were here when I was talking at the beginning of, this is really unique, in my experience, a unique aspect of Hamilton Wenham, that this came out so strongly.
So-
And I think it's really worth pointing out, and
No,
who you're looking for.
and I do too. In that sort of, in processing the information here, maybe that is important. Maybe even that it really is. Because that's sort of the message that this is giving. And that's good, right? I mean,
I'll just say,
okay, go ahead. That's what we're here for.
I'll just say that I'm not entirely sure I know what this sentence means.
I think maybe we can make it a
You know
little
what I
bit more robust, but.
Yeah, this is coming from having been a teacher, not for very long, but been a teacher, worked in education for a long time. I'm not exactly so maybe I'm just being dense. Like I don't
No,
know
I don't
how
think
this.
you are.
I don't know how this exhibits in someone's background or their experience. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have. I don't know what this really means.
Wordsmithing is totally appropriate if you have a,
Right, but
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure I know.
Yeah.
I think I need to sort of sit down and read the focus group comments more, with more intent to sort of really understand what we're trying to get at here.
I'm wondering too if this is along the same lines of what schools could be, this whole shift now towards, away from assessment and state mandated. Could it be,
Well-
or?
I think it's.
Yes, we could, but the state still mandates a test.
Right.
There still is a budget restriction. I mean, this is where we can, not to be sort of, the contrarian here, but like we can
my
always,
job.
we can think about everything we really want to see, but there's still constraints that that we're bounded by, right? So as much as we want to sort of get away from a state mandated test, there still is a state mandated
But the
test.
state is shifting.
But that's
Maybe
also-
slowly.
Perhaps,
But
but
you don't-
we can't not recognize that there are still limitations to what we can possibly do. Like not even I mean, I tend to think non-educationally, just the resources we have. You know, so like when all the principals said creative use of space, like every principal in the budget session said creative use of space, I read that saying we need different space.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
that's the result, not that we're not thinking creatively, is that the current setup situation is not yielding what we need, and we need to think completely differently about it, right? Always saying that we are creatively using space is not always a good thing. It just
Yeah.
basically means that we are under-resourced and we need to think. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how we got to that point, but it's just sort of like, I don't know.
Well,
I'm not saying not have it, or not have something that gets to this thing. I just don't know what this means.
Yeah, I think.
And that's just me.
Just because I have seen just the results to that one question, that future
Yeah.
question that
Yeah.
I guess I should have shared with everyone. There were things on here like play-based kindergarten, make it more relevant to the kids, help kids find a passion, versus read it from a textbook, take some notes, get really good at writing, and put it down on paper. So I think that's what this is trying to get at. Like, how do you create educational experiences that meet the needs of the standards in a way that is not traditional 1950s?
So just to throw out a few things like engaging students in their learning, you know.
Project-based learning.
Here's
would be an
the
example.
thing. So,
I don't see that not happening now.
right, but let me.
Which is why we want a leader who,
Let
Continue to
me
do
say
that,
this.
reinforce that?
Let me say this. If you leave this sentence as is,
Yeah.
as vague as it is, during the interview process, you're weeding out how people answer that.
Okay,
right,
right. That's a good
right.
point.
Because if they think the thing that's
I did
innovative is
skip it.
a brand-new curriculum out of a box, then we know that our staff is like,
So, no, I
Okay,
think
all right.
they were, and it just sort of hit me as Michelle was sort of defending it, that it actually gives us a great opportunity to really be getting that.
Because to ask broader questions, you get candidates to really show you where they're at versus leading questions.
Yep.
Where
Yep.
we push people down the road, and then, the person in front of you gets to see what you're looking for and then says it in front of you.
Exactly.
To me, that question is about creativity, isn't it, or no?
I missed the end of what you
Yeah.
said.
It's about creativity?
Yep,
And open-ended as opposed to having a boxed answer.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
like that more.
and I think that you're absolutely right about
I don't either,
developing the
but-
questions. I mean, some of this is
But you're gonna be able
developing
to hear
good
what they're
questions to ask the candidates that don't lead them to the answer you want.
Yeah, you definitely want those open-ended
Yep.
questions, so that way you learn more about them, because if you have the close-ended, then you don't really get to know that candidate.
Yep, so that's part of the process that we work with the screening committee, and obviously you, when you get to interview the finalists, will have an opportunity to do.
all right,
Would
so-
it be too much to combine understands and recognizes good teaching in that statement? Or is that, makes it too
I
much?
think that's the right place to put it,
Okay.
don't you?
So you would take understands and recognizes good teaching and put it with the
Capacity.
for innovative thinking and openness to new approaches to teaching and learning? Yes, no?
Yep.
Let's see what the boss says, though. Dorothy's inquisitively saying.
Dave was the boss.
I'm not even paying attention. So, I'm
To
reading
me, they're
ahead.
two different things,
Good teaching
and capacity for innovation. To
Yes,
me, they're
I think
kind
they're
of two different
Isn't it
things.
two different things?
All right,
Well,
we'll hold that off. Let's hold that thought,
interpreted very
because I think we can get agreement on demonstrated success in improving and maintaining high academic performance.
Correct.
Okay, so, all right, so now we're up to 4. So we've got communication skills is left, recognizes good teaching is left, leadership style that's visible and inclusive is left, and then that's it.
Yep.
So we talked about combining communication skills with
Leadership.
style.
Yep.
Okay, so So we believe those two go together and make a fifth one?
I'm sorry, would you?
Yes.
I missed that one.
So you take communication skills that reflect a dynamic,
Yeah.
successful leader with leadership style that is visible and inclusive?
Oh, yes, yeah.
So that would be 5. So do we want to find a way to fit understands and recognizes good teaching in, or just have it as it is, because then that would make 6?
I think 6 is fine. Once you get to 7, 8, 9, 14, then I'm going to try and rein you in. I don't think 6 would be bad.
But I wonder if good teaching, no, I'm sighing with you.
Maybe it should be excellent. No.
But no, but is it next level? But I mean, but like.
It's subjective, it's.
Yeah, how do you test for that?
Well, may I offer a
I
suggestion?
mean, it's, talking about statement testing, it's like, how do you test for some of this stuff?
If we agree, to me, a priority is somebody who is innovative and open to new approaches to teaching. Somebody who can recognize that. Can we combine understands and recognizes innovative teachers? Can we combine those two?
So it
They're
goes
open
back
to
to
new approaches to teaching and learning and recognizing innovative teaching?
I think we already talked, Dorothy kind of said
I'm thinking, I think,
no. There's 2 different things.
No,
So was that important to mostly staff, or was that important to mostly parents?
Which one?
so I'm going to say for staff, having someone who has that classroom experience and can understand and recognize when good teaching is going on in a
Right.
classroom is important.
Right.
From the parent standpoint, that we think we have a really excellent teaching staff, they're going to want someone who maintains that, right? So someone who can understand that those hires have to be solid, good
I think it should
teachers.
be
So I
separate.
think it's reflected a little bit
separate.
2 different ways, but
So
I think
we're
it's
recognizing the
they're both.
teacher.
So it's something like supports
Okay.
good teaching, or good teachers. Is that what we're,
I think it's also sort of an ability to evaluate, to go into a classroom and observe good teaching and be able to evaluate.
well, that's come
The
up on the
evaluation
goals
process.
within our
Yep.
district, is to sort of have all people being evaluated in a standardized way versus like, the principal here's way and the principal's theirs way and the principal's over here's way. So that could be something that comes up, and that could be what we're hearing. We want to have a standardized evaluation process that recognizes good teaching.
Yeah, that's coming up in many districts.
That might be what this is coming from, which is definitely a goal in this district. So we probably do want a superintendent that can facilitate that.
Yeah, so all the evaluators, when they go into a classroom, have the same set of standards and the same, They're seeing the same
Inter-rater
thing.
reliability.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the word. Thank you very
Yep.
much.
what was the,
Inter-rater reliability.
yeah, interrater.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we would keep communication skills that reflect a dynamic and accessible leader with a leadership style that is visible and inclusive. Knowledge and experience in school budget, fiscal development, implementation, and oversight, and communication of the budget issues to the public, and the ability to
Can I
capital planning.
put how I
Yep.
I put knowledge and experience in budgeting and capital planning and fiscal development, implementation and oversight. I put budgeting and capital planning.
Great. The next one's demonstrated success in improving and maintaining high academic performance. Understanding and recognizing good teaching is staying by itself. Demonstrated knowledge of special education programming and its administrative elements. Leadership style that is,
No,
that's
going
already
up.
being
Yep.
included somewhere else. So capacity for innovative thinking and openness to new approaches to teaching and learning.
Let me ask one other question. Any thought about whether this is the priority you want them in?
Do we really want to do that?
I don't think we would get that.
I think we don't have enough hours in there to get to that.
Okay,
I know we want to get there.
Yeah.
okay.
We could be here
So should
Quite
we
a while.
rely, Dorothy, on your years of expertise to put together
I'll
Alphabetize
do,
them.
for the, for the two that you're combining, if you don't mind, I'll do a little bit of
I
wordsmithing.
say we go.
And ask that, once I've done my wordsmithing, is there someone here who would be the final sign-off on the way I've done the wordsmithing?
Michelle?
I have 24 hours a day.
Michelle's bored.
did my laundry over to you, too?
Well, she's also
Well, only if
carrying
it's
the whole
cleaned, I can
project.
fold it,
So
but
to
I
take it from
I
her at this
can't
point,
put it
you have
in a
to-
machine.
Plus she has, since she can't do much anymore except on
Lay in a
her
bed
computer
mostly.
in bed.
Today was exciting, I got to go out to a doctor. Yeah.
Can
Oh,
I
and
just say,
yeah.
understanding and recognizes good teaching sounds so broad. I mean, is it meant to be that?
We can go back to that argument
I
of
know,
let
it's
them,
just-
how to let them answer it.
I think,
Honestly, it's a very
Right.
typical bullet that people have in there.
Say that again?
It's a very typical bullet in selection
It
criteria.
also, again, being
And
the
if-
contrarian, it's like
Bless you.
everybody, the tendency is that my teacher's great, everybody else is not, right? So there is no, it's very hard to sort of to define what they think good teaching is outside of their own personal experience. And so this is why I kept asking, I don't know how to test for this. Like, I don't know what good teaching is, or even to know, how can you tell me what you think good teaching is? Because it's a very, it's a different kind of experience.
which to me is why it's so perfect, because when they answer, how do they recognize good teaching? You're going to find out what they think it is, and see if it matches the search, or the whatever, screening committee's
Yeah.
But we're also,
interpretation.
yes, we can certainly do that through the process. I just don't know if the end result necessarily is consistent. Like, what I think good teaching is may not be exactly what you think good teaching is either.
I agree.
Right? And that's where that's the challenge, is that anybody who's going to answer, again, we all prioritize something differently. We all will seek out what we think the best answer is differently to the same question.
Right.
So,
Right.
So,
just throwing out something else, supports educators in the, I'm not sure what the end of that is, supports educators in the development of their teaching.
what
Fill in the
about a
word, I don't know.
statement, something like evaluates, supports, retains high-achieving teachers?
Yes, I agree.
don't
I wasn't
mean,
sure if
like,
this
some
meant retain.
version of that, but isn't that something that we're getting at?
So, yeah, I think what you're saying is, evaluate is probably a good word, although the superintendent doesn't evaluate the teachers, which is the issue, but, but,
But supports and retains.
How about this? Creates a culture where, because I think Ty is going down a path that I like, which is
Yep.
that this bullet is really trying to recognize how the superintendent interacts with staff, right? So what we're reading in the first set is that the staff were looking for a superintendent who's collaborative, who's inclusive, who communicates, who's visible, who supports the teachers. And to me, that's like you're establishing a culture of whatever we want to say. And I think if this bullet is trying to get to staff needs or staff interaction, then let's make it about that, right? Because it's more than just teaching. Staff do a lot more than just teaching, right? They do more than just in the classroom.
I think it's about supporting good teaching. It's about creating a culture that supports good teaching.
Teachers do good work.
Yeah.
Do good in the classroom.
Supports and retains them, yeah. Because when you feel supported, most of the
well,
time, you're
how about that?
Yeah.
Creates a
Support, creates a culture that supports and retains good teachers,
Yes, I like that.
or excellent teachers, or
Fosters,
fosters.
creates.
That I can get about.
Fosters-
That-
fosters
that
good
is a silly
teaching.
guitar.
You're gonna, you still got the good.
It has to be-
Teaching, yes,
Yeah, it has to be,
teaching.
it has to be
not teachers.
fosters.
Good
teach-
teaching.
Yeah, fosters a culture that supports good teaching or something like that, yeah. Yeah, however you wordsmith it. But we know what it's not about recognizing the teaching, it's about supporting the
Yes.
people that are doing that.
Yeah, and the environment,
Yeah,
the
and the
culture,
environment, yeah. Okay,
The risk-taking.
Yeah.
okay.
Fosters a culture that
Then it goes back
supports.
to capacity for me.
Do you need an official vote, or do you feel like we've got that?
I think Dorsey's still looking for.
Because we said good teaching, but then you get right back to your point of what's good teaching, right?
Well, but
I'm not
it's a
saying good.
culture. It's a culture question versus a,
What is good teaching?
Yeah.
What is good teaching
Fosters a
question.
culture that supports.
How about fosters a culture that supports educators
Supports and
to
develops.
perform at the highest level or perform at the something at the. I mean,
Beneficial to the students and the
You're doing good.
Something
Keep
like
going. That's sounding good.
yeah, but
Keep going, Jean. You
Keep
got
going,
it.
Jean.
You're almost
You
there.
got
for the
it.
benefit of all students, yeah.
something like
For the benefit of all students?
That supports teachers,
teaching, right? No.
Well,
So
I want
supports-
to get away from just teachers,
Yeah,
right? 'Cause we have-
Educators.
'cause coaches are
Educators
also
is a
tea-
great
coaches
word.
are also
Supports
educators. So
education.
we need to recognize educators, anybody in the building, from
Yep.
the custodians
Supports
as well.
educators.
We
Yep,
can all
I
be
got,
educators,
I got the
right?
educator part.
Yep.
So, I'm sorry, can you read me what I,
Fosters a culture that supports educators.
okay, supports.
And
fosters a
develops.
culture that-
in
I need to s- I
reaching
need to
all
see.
students, is that what you said?
And develops.
In teaching all students, is that what you said?
Oh, right, to perform at the highest level?
You're not, I think in the end, you're not going to get away with something that's a little bit subjective, right? Yeah.
No. Right.
I like that.
I do too.
At the highest level?
Right.
Yeah.
And the students
Okay.
in that sentence?
Pardon?
Are the students, no?
No,
No.
not right now. Fosters a culture that supports educators to perform at the highest level. Sounds good?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for your patience.
No problem.
all right, so that leads into, which we would not, this advertising thing, which we would not print
Say that again?
at the
The
additional
line
fee, but
capacity
would
for
be
innovative
created,
Stands alone.
Stands
Yep.
alone.
be put with the advertisement for, like, this would be put
This,
as a link
where-
on your website
Oh,
and stuff like
yes.
that, yeah.
Yes, so some of the things that you saw before that were printed brochures were kind of trifolds.
Yeah.
Because you decided that you wouldn't be printing it, we thought it was more appropriate to put it in something that was a little bit more readable in
Yep.
sitting in front of your computer format. The places where there are blank boxes will be pictures. I'm just waiting to get them from Vinnie.
Okay.
So the TBDs under position is what we just finished. Much of the rest of it is pretty basic information. The one thing that you will want to think about is the salary range that you might want to put in.
So I checked with Vinnie, we have budgeted 193,000 and like some more dollars, but under 500 for next year, so I don't know if we want to put in a range with that being the cap, or if we want to put in something else. But that's the amount that we currently have
We can't
budgeted
just say
for
based
next
on
year.
experience.
You can say to be negotiated. You would put based on experience anyway, right?
Yeah.
And I know
I think to be
everybody's going to think they
negotiated.
walk in with the experience that's going to get them the top dollar that you listed, but that's a bit. I will say, I would, if you're going to put in a range, I would put 195, maybe round up to the top. You're on the lower end of the salaries of districts in the area.
Please just.
We are on the lower end?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we've been saying that for years now.
Yep.
I know, we pay more than Lynn. Don't we?
Comparable districts.
Yeah, I mean, Lynn, massive school district.
Well,
I know,
Only-
I know, it's
thousands of
weird.
students.
Yeah.
We pay more than that
Yeah. I mean, you could put salary commensurate with experience, salary to be negotiated.
I think salary to be negotiated, not put out a number.
Yeah.
I think people will look. I think some, if they're looking at area districts and you put to be negotiated, you may be having people who think a little bit unrealistically
Right.
about what
Okay.
you're really willing to pay.
What have you done in the past with other
That, I would
Would put 180 and 190.
I would say well over 90% of districts put in a range.
Okay.
And
So I-
if you put,
what
if you
did-
put in 180 to 195, you have people that are looking like, all right, it doesn't make sense for you to move, or, you know what, this is a step up, depending on where they already are, and they know what they're getting into.
Yep, yep.
And it's just cut and dry.
I agree.
You hit the range I would
If that's the
recommend
number
to.
we want, if we want to put a number, I think that's the numbers we want. Is our current superintendent at like 170 something?
190.
Oh,
Well, it said for fiscal year '20, it said the same amount,
yeah, I remember it
193.
was less than the prior superintendent, but not much less.
So.
Something in the 180s. Yeah, so I think that's an appropriate range, yeah.
In the budget, it said that fiscal year is 193.
Yeah, he said 193, 2
277.
something. Okay.
So
that-
we shouldn't,
but
though,
that's-
put
that's
that
salary
range
plus a
above
few
what is
benefits.
budgeted right now, correct?
No, the benefits were separate.
Well,
But
that's
it's
what you
like,
have to ask yourself.
Okay, that would factor.
Sick days and.
Yeah.
That
You
was
could make
another-
that
was
small
another
adjustment in the
amount.
There
budget.
was some.
We can't go above,
buy-
that's a ceiling.
There was some. buy-
Whatever
Okay.
is in the budget should be the
at
ceiling.
beginning, like when she came in last
Okay.
June.
180 to 193
There's
to
a-
whatever, 71 or whatever it is kind of a weird range to put on.
If you do 195, that's fine, right?
I think it is.
But,
Well, NCR pocket.
there's a few, like,
We won't buy toilet paper next year. We'll ask for donations of that.
classes or something.
Okay.
That's-
So
that
that's
just
what
sort
I
of
was,
gets-
Cut down on the reading.
when I was looking at the budget,
Used to
that's.
print.
but,
All
yeah,
right, so
it's
do we
all looped in.
have consensus on a range of 180 to 195?
Paycheck.
Yes, okay, so it looks like that's what we're going to put on
Yep,
there.
but there's no way.
So as this, I'm going to ask sort of the same question. As this gets developed, we plug in the pictures, we plug in the criteria
All the
or the
letters.
position.
Website.
Is Michelle the person who I can say, this is, not press the print button because we're not printing, but it's okay, we're going to put it up online
She'd be
now?
the one we'd send it all to double check. So-
When are you going to be putting it online?
As soon as it's ready. We'll start
Okay, so
advertising.
before next Wednesday, you would do that?
Yeah,
Okay,
if
all
it's
right.
ready before next Wednesday, we'll get it up before next
We
Wednesday.
know about all the typos in here, right?
There are
Yes, we
typos to be
do.
fixed. Yeah, this is a draft, this
I
is
have
still a
one-
draft.
Question about the curriculum supervisors as 3, so I know what that's referring to. But I'm wondering how we capture that we have curriculum leaders that really only teach 2 classes and they do coaching in the classroom and stuff like that. Are those curriculum supervisors because they supervise?
Are they department heads?
Yeah,
Is that their title?
they're,
No, the curriculum.
No,
they're
we have
department heads.
No,
department heads and
are
curriculum.
they called I think they're called curriculum,
They're curriculum leaders and department
I
heads.
think they're called curriculum leaders.
Yeah, we
Called
have,
curriculum leaders, not curriculum supervisors.
And it's 3?
No, it's 7
Oh,
that I
okay.
counted.
Yeah, curriculum leaders.
So, I mean, I don't think we have to fix this tonight. You and I can work
Okay,
on this,
so- I just didn't know what the purpose of this was.
It's generally so that someone looking at the position knows how big the staff is and how it's made up.
Okay, so I
I
think
think
those,
titles really do matter here, right? It's like director of facilities, so you know you're working with director level, who
Yep.
you're working with for assistant superintendents.
yep, yep,
And just curriculum leaders, there are 8.
right.
Yeah, so, so we can correct the titles, we
Yep.
can add, we
Like,
can
this is where
adjust.
vernacular is key.
Yep.
So they're,
Might add coaches,
Huh?
coaches?
I don't know if we have those.
Oh, we don't? I don't know.
Well, the person that's like the math coach, she's this,
Oh,
As
I meant
curriculum
like,
supervisor.
like the,
oh, sports
athletic, yeah.
coaches.
I mean,
As
maybe
a-
put athletic director and.
Yeah, we don't have an AD on here.
Oh, yeah,
More
AD
than
should
one
be.
Yeah. I would put AD, but I wouldn't necessarily put the number of coaches if you think about every sport every year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine.
it changes. Yeah, I just do AD.
Yeah.
okay,
Can I offer some edits on the back thing,
sure.
real
We
quick, because I know it's going to be done.
Took them right off of the Hamilton and Wenham website, so yeah.
I know, but so there's a notation, there's a note
Yeah, I saw that.
in the third
That
line that needs to be
doesn't-
taken out.
That doesn't have a place to go look for it.
Which one
Yeah.
is that?
Where?
The Hamilton side, the third line, right after the population size, 7,764, there's a note
There's a footnote with there's a footnote.
with actually,
Oh,
look
because
for
it
the
was probably
footnote, but there's
taken
no
right
place
off
to
of the
look.
website, so
Yeah.
yeah, we just need to get rid of that.
from the,
Which one?
right in the middle of that paragraph, the parenthetical
Right
that
here.
begins thus.
Oh, we're on the other
Can we
side.
strike that sentence and then the following sentence? And then pick it up at Patton Park, one of the parks in downtown Hamilton? And then the last sentence in
So,
the.
wait. So dinner, you want to strike between thus and dinner?
Yes,
Okay.
'cause I think it's irrelevant. I think it's irrelevant. Of course, I'm just one of 7 on this board. In the Wenham side, the last sentence, I think should go up to Hamilton, because it refers to Hamilton.
Yeah, I looked at that, and it.
Weird that it's in the Wenham side.
Well, it's
Well, because it's I think it's the
yeah.
institutions of higher learning all
Yeah,
got
I think
jumped
you're
together.
right, though,
I see
Jean.
what you're saying.
We
Okay.
put like, Hamilton has these, Wenham has those.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
I think it's
Can I just ask a question? It's probably right. Was the ice house burned in 1973?
Ice
I
house.
don't think so.
1973.
I think it's 1873.
That's what I thought, because I didn't think you still had ice as an industry in 1973.
Well, if we did,
You never know. You never know here.
yeah, revenue.
However, that's probably on exhibit at the Wenham Museum, if you'd like to go and see it anytime, it's fantastic.
Could
Probably
we,
going nuts
would it
right
be
now.
worth saying it's 2 towns, 1 community?
Okay,
Do we have a newspaper?
Or is it, wouldn't it, it
Do we have
would
a
not
newspaper?
fit in
Yeah,
there?
is it
maybe?
Chronicle still?
well, the Chronicle
Wenham
Register,
is
I
2
think is what it's now
towns,
called,
1 community.
because it's
Called the
combined with
Chronicle Register.
Boxford,
If you look
Middleton,
at,
Topsfield, Hamilton,
if you
Wenham,
look
and
at the
Ipswich.
last paragraph
Okay,
under
because the reference
Hamilton,
is that we have a newspaper.
closely tied to Wenham,
We do.
the community of Hamilton Wenham was listed among the best places to live. kind of.
Yeah, okay,
Oh, that's
community of
cool.
Hamilton, Wenham, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Cool.
so we're,
It burned in 1935.
1935.
Nothing right about
That's
that.
not even right. It's 1973. Oh.
This is according to.
How about the
history of
oldest polo
Wenham
club in the
Lake.
United States?
It is.
Yep, perfect.
I do know that for a fact.
It's the oldest polo club in the United States as well. And people come from all over the world for Gordon Conwell.
All right.
We have Gordon College,
So
too.
may I suggest that you read this over, send any comments to Michelle, and Michelle and I will work on edits based on your comments? Would that work?
That sounds wonderful.
Okay. So next, we have to tell the screening committee what they're going to be doing. So there's a couple of errors already, which is, I didn't write this from scratch. So, under responsibilities, number 1, we're going to change that last part to next town manager to next superintendent. And maybe we'll just put the superintendent versus next. And then Dorothy was suggesting that we tell the screening committee, instead of, on number 7, on the next page, instead of a minimum of 3 candidates, that we tell them a range of 3 to 5, or whatever we want.
Yep.
And on number 7, we would eliminate the last sentence, because that's what we just did. And then Dorothy feels that we should put in March 11th as the date to get the report by, because the committee will either, the screening committee will either have it to us by the 9th, or they will have it to us by the 11th, and the 11th would work.
The other decision, maybe just related to this so we don't forget, is the school committee should decide if the school committee is deciding who's the chair of the screening committee or whether you're allowing the screening committee to elect their own chair.
Yeah, so I think the last time the school committee chair was on the screening committee, so therefore that person served as the chair. So this time we can decide, do we want to let them pick who the chair would be based on, you know, who has the time? Or do we want to say, oh, we definitely want it to be, you know, the parent that we select the next time, or we want it to be the principal or the whoever?
And you don't have to right now say it's going to be the parent or the principal. You can decide who the people are and then
Yeah.
make that decision. I just don't want you to forget to make the decision, that's
Yeah.
all.
So chair should be on here. So we would either put the chair will be selected by the screening committee, or we would write the chair of the screening committee will be
Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones.
selected by the
Yes.
body, yeah.
Yeah.
And we can do that after we know who's going to be on the,
Suggestion for the title, where it says
Selection.
Hamilton and Wenham Community.
How much
plural.
control we want to have over
Can
it.
we add Hamilton-Wenham Community?
I agree with you.
That
Wanna-
way-
Yep.
I
That way
personally
it emphasizes
Yep.
that we're one community.
care if they pick their own chair, but
Well, I'll just say that when I was on the search committee for the town manager at Hamilton, we elected our chair within the body.
Yeah.
At least that's what I remember.
yeah, the same when we did the town administrator search with Peter Lombardi, we elected the chair from within the body,
Yeah.
because the selectmen had picked the people
Yeah.
that they all probably felt were competent.
Yeah, well, and if that's sort of the tradition, then you've made the decision. It's just, a decision that we want to make sure that is clearly defined for the search consultant to know what she should be doing.
Yeah, the other part, honestly, is that, we have two constituents here, parents, two main constituents, not the only ones, parents and also the staff. And I would not necessarily want one of the groups assume that we are skewing the screening committee by choosing the chair for the screening committee, but that's my view.
Yep, I agree.
so then we're saying we should
The
let
chair will
them-
be elected from the members of the screening committee.
Yes.
We have
I'm okay with that.
agreement on that?
Yeah.
Okay, we have agreement on that, great. Okay. All right, so now,
Michelle, going back to this, what's this called? What's this document called? The invitation
Is
to
it the
apply?
charge?
The
the charge?
No,
Where
the
it-
invitation to apply.
Where it says Hamilton and Wenham Communities profile, can we?
Yep.
Can we Hamilton-Wenham Community singular? Because we really are one community. I don't see kids saying that you're, what's that? You don't think we're
So-
one community?
dash. Will you agree to an M dash?
But, what'd you
Yeah.
say?
I don't think you can include it that way.
Yeah, we're a regional school district, but we're two different communities. It's a regional.
Still two separate legal entities.
Yeah,
We're
but to
two-
me, we're one community.
No,
right?
we're not.
Really?
No, oh, no.
Regional school district.
I disagree.
We are,
You know,
we are
having taught the
definitely
district for
in
4
community
years.
with each other.
Whether we like it or not.
Community with, yes.
Okay. I don't know, I just see it differently.
What town are you
I
in?
don't.
Wenham?
Just
I'm
be
in
one
Wenham. I just, when I see the kids interacting, they don't
But yeah, that's a,
interact as if
We
they're in
could,
different
as
towns. They-
that's true,
It's-
but when you get to the towns, it's definitely different.
Oh, at the town level, but to me,
So
at the
the,
school
No, because
level.
I mean,
I recently
the
found out that the
purpose of
school
having the
district is
community
a
profile
hyphen.
is to give an idea, someone an
Hamilton
idea
hyphen
of flavor of the place, like
Not
make it,
Hamilton,
this is a place that would be
Yeah.
nice to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something to get too hung up on.
No, I know, but that's just the way I see it as.
Yeah.
The kids in the schools do not see themselves as from separate towns. They see themselves as from one
Yep,
community.
Yep.
And that's how they,
Okay,
that's the.
Okay,
so moving on.
so moving on. So there are some interesting things about the screening committee candidates. So we can either decide tonight what to do so that it will help us when we pick the actual people, or we can wait and talk about the actual people next time and deal with kind of like some of the sticky questions then. But we do have a request from the teachers union specifically that we can talk about, or I don't know what you guys want to do. Do you guys want to know who we're talking about before you kind of make just a procedural decision? Or do you want to kind of make a procedural decision kind of clean without knowing the personalities? And that's really for us to decide how we want to do that. I think that the one request from the union, I think clearly there's a request for a specific person to be on for a specific reason. And so that is known, and so that just is, and we can discuss that if you want now, or we can discuss that next time.
Is it this?
So that's it, yes. So the union president feels that he should be on the committee and not have to take one of the spots of the high school teachers. But it was also brought up that they felt that staff was underrepresented on the committee, and I think that's because they thought teachers were the only staff. They didn't realize there was also a principal, also a central office staff member. So there's really 5 staff members, which is the majority constituency, 4 community members, and 3 parents. So if you were to add him as the union president, then staff would really outweigh the other constituencies.
My guess is that the way they're looking at it is that non-educators outweigh educators.
Right.
Just to let you know, they're probably looking at it that there's 2 sets, not
Yep.
that there's 3 sets. Just
And the other thing that comes up later on is there's a lot of people that have middle school and elementary school people who applied. There was only 1 person who has a high school student apply. And then there were some people who just had elementary school students apply. So if we want to just say, just because you had a high school student, you're qualified? Or do we want to say, well, maybe we're going to pick it from the whole host of parents? And because we had, I think it was, I was trying to look, I think it was 12 parents apply, do we want it to be maybe 4 parents instead of 3? Do you want to add the union president and add a,
And what would that do?
that makes it 14 people, I think, make 14.
instead of 12?
Then you're on the
You're on the high.
edge. I wouldn't go bigger than 14.
And apparently the
But I
last
think-
time it was 15, which was a big group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna add 1, I would add 2, because, but
For the balance.
unless the one you add is only the union president, because then you've still got sort of that. If you add a parent without adding another educator, then I think you're really starting to get imbalanced.
Or we could keep it at the 12, so, because sometimes, when you get on that higher end, it can be very hard.
But the 12 then is skewed more towards non-staff, correct?
Well,
Necessarily.
and then
No, because you've got
we also
administrators.
have that there were really only 2 people who live in the community only apply to
And
be
no
community
kids.
members.
No kids
Who
or
have
no-
no kids.
Yeah, yeah.
The other people, 2 of them are staff members, and 1 of them works for one of the towns. So, in a high-level capacity. So you would want to say, well, okay, so now you really only have 2 community members, but then if you put these staff people on as community members, then you've increased the number of staff, meaning staff in the district.
I would think
So-
that since you already have staff members, you have to blindly just disallow the staff members from being part of the community at large.
Yeah. So then you only have community members, 2 community members, and then the 1 person who's in the government.
Well, that.
So you don't have 4 community members then,
But you do have representation from the community.
through the parents.
Yeah,
Yes,
you do.
yes.
So
Which means you could have 4, keep it sort of in parallel by having 4 parents and 3 community members.
Remind me, did the folks who wanted to join the screening committee, did they have to submit something?
They do.
They do.
And those will all be provided to you.
Okay.
I will say, there is one parent that you could consider to be
I don't
a
know
community
her
member
or-
because of their
I don't know where those two live.
position in government, not as an employee of the town, but as an appointed elected official in town. There is one parent that you could consider in that way, which could bring parity to the community members.
Okay, I know who that guy is.
Yeah, didn't say it was a guy.
All right.
So we can, so I know these are hard decisions to make without knowing the names. That's why I didn't give you the names, because they're also hard decisions to make, because I know the names, so I'm trying not to.
Is there a way to?
We can make this decision next week, too. I just wanted to bring the issues up.
Yeah, we certainly could do that. Is there a way? I kind of need to see it visually. Could you possibly do a matrix? So we have 12 people who submitted.
Let me just get the numbers that are exact.
Okay.
I had them sort of like. I guess I have to download it because it's in Word. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay.
So while you're doing that, so what I was thinking of is a visual of what category any candidate fulfills, right? Because seeing this visually will really help. Because obviously, because clearly we're already hearing that someone could possibly fill at least
Multiple.
2 categories, right?
Yep. So there are 2 people who are just residents, no children in the district.
Okay.
Both of those people were from Wenham, and both of those people do hold some sort of elected or appointed position. I'll just say that.
Okay.
There is one person who works in government for one of the towns, who is at a high level. So you could think of someone who's like a chief, a manager.
Is that in addition to the residents, or is that a third person?
That's a third
A
person.
third person, okay.
Then there was a parent who is also an elected or appointed official in one of the towns.
The parents who said there are going to be 3, 1 representing each level?
Yes.
Okay.
So, then there were 2 staff members who applied to be community representatives based on their status in the community. Okay. There was one person who has a high school-aged student who also has a middle school student. There was one person who has just middle school student or students. There were 6 people who have middle school and elementary school students. One of those people is an elected official in Hamilton. And then there are 4 people who only have elementary school students. So there was one letter that was received after the deadline. It was originally sent at 3:30 on the last day, but it appears that it was copied and pasted out of the notice. So since my email was at the end of a sentence, they included the last period. So then it bounced back, and so then it was not received until the next day. So we can decide,
I think we just vote to sort of include that. I see.
I just want to,
I'm fine with
I
including
mean-
that.
okay. I have made that mistake myself. However, my husband works in government, and in government, that would be a no-starter. So
Yeah, but
I just
so-
need us to be sure that that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So I think we do that.
So that person has been included in the list I just read to you.
Okay, so I want to back up for a second, right? Before, going into this sort of matrix, we want to think about why we created the breakdown the way we did. And I think sort of in doing that and then rediscussing that, that we should be able to come to a consensus in saying, okay, they're a parent, but they're coming in as a community member, and saying, well, the thought process was separating parents from community members, which would automatically disqualify them.
Which then means you don't have 4 community members.
So, but that's okay, only in that we equally advertise this space, and we came up with these numbers blindly, to represent the town equitably. If, when we have the problems of, well, is Wenham more represented on the board? Well, there's nothing we can do to push people
Right.
to participate.
Right.
And to sort of change the rules, say, well, there's this space open, we had all these parents willing to volunteer, like, that's awesome, that's what makes these schools great, I get that, but we need to take the step back and say, this is what we, decided on, this is why we decided on it, and stick with our guns there. I think that, to sort of change, and I think it's really important, and thank you for sort of taking the extra time and being careful not to sort of give away who people are. We could probably guess 90% of the people on that list. So we can actually look at this, objectively, and just make the proper decisions before we actually drop the names into the available slots. That's my thought process.
So it means that you won't have the community members represented in the way that we wanted.
So, but that's not our fault.
Well, but parents live in the community.
But there are vested interest. The thought process of having the community members in here is for when we get pushback as a board saying, I don't have a student in the school system, yet my tax rates are X because of this
Right.
budget. Those are the spaces that we're trying to fill with that, or, theoretically, that's the thought process why we wanted to give that representation. If there isn't someone that stepped up to fill that role, that's not on us. We gave the opportunity. And that's what I think we have to stick with. Because all that's going to happen, if we put a parent in that role, sorry, I don't know why I got so loud right there, but if we put a parent in that role, that can just come back to say, well, the community wasn't equitably represented. There were more parents on that crew.
Well, that will happen right now because you're not going to fill that
But-
community role
but we're
at
not-
all.
We're not filling that role because we didn't get it. If we fill that with a parent, we're only asking for trouble.
I don't think we're asking
I
for
think
trouble
you
at all, because
would-
they are a community member as
So
well.
I'm not saying that they're not. What I'm
Okay.
saying is they're not the community members without children in the district, which is what these roles were designed to be.
True. The only thing I will say is that the parents are the least represented on the committee because they only got 3 slots. They only got 1/4 of all of the slots.
So then, if we're not gonna fill, and then we shouldn't add the other 2 people, because it's still can be skewed towards administration and,
Well, it will, because you will have 5 administrators, 3 parents, and 2 community members.
5 faculty members, not 5 administrators, yeah.
Can I throw these numbers out and see if you guys agree? I'm just, this is for my own purpose. 4 parents, 3 teachers, 1 principal, 1 central office, and 3 community members?
Say that
But
again.
Right, that's
David,
what-
David wants to
That's
not
12.
do that. Yeah.
That's what we said.
No, I agree that we should take one of the community member ones and shift it to a parent, because
A parent or,
Since
Yeah.
we don't have.
since we don't have people who volunteered.
So
Well, a parent or a teacher,
but does
depending
that
upon what you want to do.
4 parents, 3 teachers, 1 principal, 1 central, and 3 community? But your
Yep.
concern with the community is that it's not Hamilton's not represented?
No.
No, well, there just aren't any.
Only 2 people.
I've got a government official and 2 residents only.
And then the 2 staff members, who, you know, they fall into 2 constituencies.
Right.
Yeah.
So we would, for those 3 community members, we would have to, we potentially
There's
have.
only 2 candidates that qualify as community members, period.
People who live in town.
Right, but there's
Period,
but there's-
without
but
another
what about
one.
the staff members that want to be community members?
So, but
That's
that,
5,
but that's,
right?
but
Right,
so.
there would be
There's
5.
5, so choose from those 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
But what?
this community member, the reason that's put in there is that it isn't a representative of another one of these other, right?
But to your point, it's not our
Member role
fault, right?
has to be
So,
someone without
but-
kids, without
Excuse me?
working here.
I'm sorry, I just
Right?
missed it.
The role of the community members has to be someone not working here, not with kids.
That's the
Like, that's the
question.
point,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
To get get buy-in.
So in that sense, we were unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And trust me, I have about 35 no's. Like, I
We
called
weren't
every person I knew
unsuccessful
without children.
As much as the community is successful in representing itself.
So,
That's not on us.
yeah, no, but I'm saying, I tried to recruit,
So we're going to stick with the
but I
2
just don't know
community
people who don't have
members?
children.
But so we're looking like we're leaning towards only having the 2 community members in.
And a smaller group.
Yes.
But then, you're going to have 5 people who work in the district and 5 people who don't. And if you were to add the union president, then you're going to have 6 people who work in the district and 5 people who don't.
So I
And to
think
me,
it's
that
fine.
seems lopsided.
But I think that we keep the numbers the way we had it. I don't think I don't think we should add anyone tonight.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
think we should either.
Add who? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
So we would end up with
Anyone.
a committee of 10.
11?
Does that mean that John
And
Koch is not on
It
there?
started out as 12, you're eliminating 2
Correct.
slots.
I'd like to see him on there.
We had what?
Plus, I know we're limiting
We
one
we
community.
should have had 4 community members.
And we're only having 2,
We're only having
I'm
2.
sorry, what was that?
so it makes it 10.
So how many, 3, so,
What,
wait.
was there, we say 4 parents though?
Well, you said that, and I agreed with you, but other people didn't. So yes, you and I did say that.
I don't want, right, so the whole purpose of this, the reason this sort of started last spring, I don't want to be changing the rules as we go. Right?
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And, you know, making these decisions months ago, going into it blindly is the way to go.
Science, but he's also the
It will come
association
back on
president.
us, no matter what, but we're doing
High school.
things as
I see.
as equitably as can be, you know, can be argued.
Okay, I see.
And
Okay.
we
I just
need
think
to
he's
sort of
brilliant. He has a
stick to
ton
our
of
guns
experience.
in that sense. And just keep doing,
And he's very
you know,
direct.
and it's a matter of transparency. We said this is what's going to happen. These are the people we're looking to recruit. These numbers didn't meet those recruiting numbers. Again, that's not on us.
Because we
And-
asked.
Right.
And I just feel like we
times.
should allow parents to be community members, because I pay taxes in this town just as much as anybody else does. The
No, I
taxes
mean,
affect
but
me
that's not
just
what's
as
being
much.
argued. You know what I mean? Like, that's not, I'm not saying that parents aren't community members. I'm saying in regards to how we were setting up this screening committee, these were what the, you know, the numbers that we decided on way before we ever sent out, a statement of interest.
But did we have a specific saying on who a community member is? Did it say?
Did not. What
So-
we did say was that you should say in your letter what constituency you wanted to represent. And people were not always clear on that. They put in how they fit into these various groups. So if you were a parent and a community official, they put in both. They didn't say, but I want to be the one that represents the community.
Yep.
So, because we didn't get that, we asked for that, but we didn't get that response.
But I mean, well, no, I guess not. Because every parent who applies is going to be a community member, but there are, what?
Not
70
necessarily.
There are 70 that.
Maybe a choice.
Not necessarily,
Right.
yeah. And actually, I had heard that someone who had choice students was going to apply, but they ended up not. Or if these people do have choice students, I don't know that.
So, no.
I feel like we should.
I said what I thought.
I feel like we should eliminate one community person and replace it with a parent. That's
So
personally.
what are the numbers again? I'm so lost now. So how many parents were you?
So originally, there should be 3,
3 parents, okay.
but now we would have 4.
And the teachers?
Teachers had 3.
One from every level, yeah, right?
Yep. And
Principal.
One
central
principal, one
office.
central office staff, and we were originally going to have 4 community members, but now we would have
Oh, I see, okay.
2.
We only have 2 who represent.
I bet I'm going to be able to convince you to pick 3.
I agree.
I bet when you know the names, I'm going to be able to convince you on a 3rd one.
Okay, so then you're recommending
4 parents, 3 teachers, 1 principal, 1 central office,
And 3 community members.
And now I'm going to, and then, so could you give me that number?
so that's
4, 3, 1, 1, 3.
Yeah, I didn't.
this is
Could someone add that for me?
12.
12.
8, 9.
So then the question is, Dorothy says no, and I think,
So I've got 4, 3, 1, 1, 3.
No, I think you have 11, if you, with that.
4, 7,
Community
9,
members up to.
12. Community members is 3?
3 parents, 3 teachers, that's.
No, that's where 4, 4 parents.
4 parents, 3 teachers.
That's where you're off, 4 parents.
okay,
4
so it would be
parents.
12. So it would be the same number. So then,
I have so many scribbles.
that'd be the same number. So then, we just have the question of, and I totally understand the union president's point of view. If I was a union president, I would feel like I should be able to serve. However, there was an opportunity to be the representative from that school. So
Can he still represent the high school, though, as a teacher?
that wasn't,
But he didn't throw his name in, he did it.
his choice is either to be added as that. So also, the union president didn't feel like he should select the teachers, that we should select the teachers. So at the middle school, there's only 1 person, so that's easy. At the
Yep.
elementary level, there are 2. So we'll have to decide, we should review them and pick, how that person fits into the whole pool of skill set. At the high school, there were 3 recommended, and then there's also the union president.
Did the teachers submit anything or?
No.
No, right, because it's union role.
That's- Yeah,
We could do random selection, right? Random number generator.
could do
use
that.
Pick out of a hat.
I actually know all the teachers. And
Well, 2, actually, with this one. 2 other ones.
I think the elementary, they're both
They're
very
both
capable.
outstanding
They're
people.
very outstanding, and actually, they're good friends.
And they've been highly
Well,
active,
these-
but
But the teachers self-nominated, the union, right, so the union president didn't name them. The teachers asked to join, right, so,
he gives sort of like recommendations, but there's
And
nothing
those-
that you could,
Yeah.
yeah, I have no way of determining if
Correct.
one's better qualified than the other. I sort of feel like the elementary teacher, I mean, I know who some of them are, but I don't know them personally because my kids don't but
They're brilliant.
for the elementary and high school set, you know, I would just say pick a name out of the hat.
What about?
Rock, paper,
building
scissors.
representation? Where, do you know where the principal is from?
Here.
So would it make sense to choose the teacher who is not represented at the school if the school?
That could make sense.
So then that would be, so for the elementary, then that would be one person.
Can I ask Dorothy a question, and this goes back to the union president? Historically, has the union president been on this?
Historically, when the union president is on, they're not on as the president, they're on as one of the teacher representatives.
Okay.
Can I just verify your numbers? You have 4 parents, 3 teachers, 1 principal, 1 central office, and you're down to 2 community members?
3. We
3
went up.
community
I'm going to
members,
convince
okay.
them on 3. I am.
Okay. Okay.
I know we talked numbers several times.
I kept coming up with 11. That's what
'Cause you're
my mistake
probably
was.
right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm beating a dead horse here, but
I'll go with 12.
in the selection process, when you do have a union member on the committee, have you witnessed that they act as a teacher or a union president? Union president.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're taking a spot of a teacher who's on the ground. I mean, they are the teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very difficult because you
Yeah, it's
really
hard.
are in 2
Well,
roles.
I'm going to take that back a little bit. They essentially have 2 hats on. They are representing their level. They know their level, right? But they also are representing the interests of the union.
And how we have, just to get your experience, how do you think, how we've just changed those numbers, how do you think that fits? I know it can be everything
Yeah.
different, but I'm just trying to get your opinion based on what you've heard and everything. Do you think this is a good representation?
I really don't see anything wrong with it.
Okay.
I mean, I think, you know, parents are parents, but they, as Michelle said, they also pay the taxes. So I think if, you know, if you said, oh, all our community members are also parents, then I would start to say, no, you're really missing a stakeholder group.
Yep.
But I don't think, and you know, you actually, originally, in your original, before you ran into this, you really had more community members on than a subcommittee would generally have.
Okay.
Yeah, because we were trying to balance representation, and we were like, well, it can't be 1 and 1, it should be 2 and 2 then, and so maybe it's not going to work out
Yeah,
that
a
way.
lot of times there's 1 community member.
Yeah.
So if you have 3 and a parent who's, you know, I think you're almost more important to me is that staff member, non-staff member balance, because you want, you know, a lot of times community members may tend to defer, so you don't want the 2 voices to, or if you have too much of an overbalance the other way, then the voice of that one broad constituency group can get lost, or one can be overbearing. So more important to me, I think, is that balance there.
So 5 to 7 is an okay balance with 5 staff members, 7 community members, but the community members are the parents and community members without students. That's a 5 to 7. Is that okay?
I mean, that's not really, it's only one off from being totally balanced, right?
And
So-
on the one teacher who was also a community member, I'll go back to John Koch and just verify that it would be okay with him that we put that person also into the teacher pool, because that person wasn't in the teacher pool, if that's okay. Because it's after the fact, but I think that person probably thought, well, gee, I can, yeah, okay.
So really, the only choice we have to make now is out of the high school, which of the 3?
Well, and it will be now 4.
4.
And if you could include John, it'll be 5.
I think we need a vote on this.
So elementary one, we have one choice if we say Bucher's already represented it.
If you want to do it that way. Although we'd said that we would name the people at the next meeting.
Yep.
So my question tonight was really the process, so that we could get all of this icky stuff out of the way, so that we can really focus on the names and be clear about
Okay,
why we're deciding what we're deciding.
okay.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to get a motion on changing this, because I don't like the idea of changing things midstream. I understand why we're doing it, but I think we're sort of losing sight of what we were thinking
So-
months ago in setting the numbers blindly.
So I would move that we decide to have one parent serve in the place of a community member on the screening committee. So that we would have 4 parents, 3 community members, 1 principal, 1 office personnel person, and 3 teachers.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor? So we've got 5, 6. So opposed? That's me, 6 to 1.
And then because these people have already been selected, we know that Ben Scherstein is serving as the principal, and there were a couple of people from the office staff who were willing, but a fairly decent majority selected Peggy McElhaney to serve as their representative. So those 2 people will be on.
So, I'm sorry, what? So they will be on?
Peggy.
Ben and Peggy will be on, because those people were selected to represent
Okay.
their constituencies. So. The list of names, the letters, and all of that will be provided to you maybe when I get home, but it will definitely be linked to the agenda, which should be posted whenever it's ready,
Okay.
which will be Friday, which is also tomorrow, so.
And so we'll wait to do the teachers until we get the final.
Yeah, we didn't make a decision if we were going to pick out of a hat or choose by method, but we can decide that if you want next time.
I'm sorry, how do we get through the community members? and
Well, the
parents?
choices are, do you pick by method, by knowing who they are and saying who has the best fit and who represents the constituencies better, blah, or do you just put them in a hat and pick them out? So. One way's super easy, one way's super strategic.
How has this been done before?
It's
Has
been done, it's been done through picking.
It's been
It's
through
been done through
picking, not
picking.
like a draw of a
And staff has
hat.
never been on a screening committee that I am aware of. Well,
This
there
is-
was, the last time our assistant superintendent served on the screening committee, that was the only staff person that was on, so.
What we're trying to do here, Ty, is sort of take all the feedback we've gotten over years and try to create the most equitable sort of team, to come to create this community, just getting all the feedback that we can. Excuse me, trying to be as transparent as possible. And just sort of getting the feedback of the community as a whole in selecting, so they don't feel that anything was thrust upon them. So while the parts of all of this has been done prior, it's never been done quite like this before.
Okay.
So we're in uncharted territory in some regard.
Okay. I just imagine if we select from names that we know and have thought about and talked through, the optics of that don't look great.
Right. No, I agree, that there's, one of my, 2 of my kids' ex-teachers on here, so.
I think you try to limit it to reading the letters and taking the, what they say in the letters about why they would be, if you're doing it that way, that you're looking strictly at the letter and saying, this is what this person says they can contribute, and kind of trying to keep other things out of it as much as you can. And you're also talking more about why one person is good, not why another person isn't good.
Right, well, but if you're gonna get into that in reading the letters, then we need to create a standard rubric on how we're gonna actually grade the letters. You know, and it's like, do we wanna get in there as opposed to if we just did a blind draw? You know,
Yep.
that's another whole,
Yep, so are you advocating for the blind draw, is that?
I think so, I mean,
Yep.
I think reading the letters gets sticky. Right? I sense that kind of most people know everyone and
right.
kind of know personalities. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
And that would be something new for us, because we haven't done that in the past. So then that way, they can't say, well, you know, there was a little bias. Instead, we can just pick out of a hat.
And that's all I'm about right now in this process. Just, you know, we're not trying to get as sort of little back as possible and saying that we're swaying anything, you know, and just having it be as much as a, you know, sort of random draw of community members as possible. You know, obviously, everyone here is fantastic candidates in, you know, in our schools, in our community. You know, these are people that are volunteering their time to do a very tough job, you know, very important job. So it's very admirable of all of them. So you almost can't go wrong, you know, but at the same time, we want to make sure that, you know, we can keep our hands as clean as possible, just so that the community feels that they're represented fairly throughout this process. Because it is, while we are representatives of the community, it's really, you know, everybody's position we're trying to fill here, you know.
So we'll be drawing out of a hat next Wednesday.
Again, I think we need to vote on that.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that yet.
I wouldn't make,
understand
I wouldn't,
both
I
sides, but I don't
wouldn't
know
do
if I agree
anything
with
without
that.
putting it to a vote.
Yeah.
Right, because at the same time, you're gonna give me a really convincing argument on why we should read the letters, and I'm gonna believe it, you know, so.
I will convince everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah.
It's a tough call.
I'm torn, I can see
You know,
both sides.
so the only thing I can go back to, Gene, in you know, in all of you, is just saying, is trying to make it as neutral as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and that's just what I'm falling back on. That's why I didn't want to change the numbers, even though I don't disagree with
Yeah.
how we changed the numbers. I'm just trying to keep it as neutral as possible, sort of. You know, and that's just what I'm going to try and, you know, say to all of you is, you know, how to view it moving forward.
Yeah.
I'm torn between the two ways, like Jean is, and it can be hard either way. I mean, we got a middle school teacher, so that's done.
We got a principal and a central
And a
office.
principal and central
We have
office.
the 12, so 4th month, that's
So
good.
that will be a decision for next week.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's definitely one to sleep on.
yeah.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Do you have any?
I'm torn.
No. Torn. So would you like me to make a motion?
We done? Is that it?
Are we all done?
Oh, yes, I'm so tired.
I move to adjourn at 8:56.
Second.
All those in favor? I'm sorry, thank you so much, Dorothy.
Thank you, Dorothy. Sorry,
We
I
should
left you
include
out.
a thank you
Again,
before
thank
we
you for your
adjourn.
patience.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Time.
Dorothy, the first fire at the
Thanks for your
ice
input.
house.